It holds!
The weapon rack. Hello fellow crafters, this is Landvaettr back on the crafting table for another tutorial. So this one is going to be pretty fast. It's really an easy craft. We're going to work on weapon racks. As you can see here, I've already done 3 of them, and I'm going to do a 4th one, and I'm going to show you how to do this. The only one missing is the one with spears, poleaxes, and halberds. So that's the one I'm going to do today. Here you've got a weapon rack really for ranged weapons. So you can see crossbows, bows and arrows, of course. Concerning certain elements that are here on display, most of them are coming from Fireforge games miniatures. But of course, most of them you can do yourself. I'll show you how to make several of these. Here you've got the armors. So it's more helmets. And I put some chainmail. Of course, you could imagine putting some breastplate, some actual plate armor or leather armor there. I just went for chainmail because my game is low fantasy, based on the early medieval periods. And finally, you've got there a weapon rack with swords, axes, and also shields. There you go. So why are you doing 3 different weapon racks instead of just one big major weapon rack? Well, for several reasons. First, you won't exactly get the same type of weapons depending on the place the players are going to. Probably won't find any shields or swords in an archery range, for example, or in a hunting lodge. And then again, maybe you won't find as much a ranged weapon in an armory of a castle. Maybe you'll find more shields or more armor. Besides, it's gonna look way cooler to have 4 weapon racks instead of just one big. It'll just, fill up a room a lot better and give the impression that there is a lot of weapons. So there you go. Let's get to the chase and let's go to the craft. First, you'll need some popsicles, favorite ones with an interesting texture, a coffee stirrer, a kebab skewer, or matches, or toothpaste. Something to cut them, something to measure, to trim, and an X-Acto knife. You also need wood glue, super glue if you're lazy like me and you want to go fast. You'll need several little parts for your craft. You will also need some paper clips. Believe it or not, I didn't have any. I ended up using some copper wires, but really you should use paper clips. Toilet roll and the plastic card will be used later on to imitate some of the parts if you don't want to buy some. Okay, let's start by cutting all the pieces we're gonna need, starting by the frame of the weapon rack. Then we're gonna do the bottom. So take measures. I'm actually making measures in comparison to the other pieces I've built. There you go, make sure everything is at the same size. Now you're gonna trim. We're just gonna make sure everything is flush. Okay, I'm using a kebab skewer to do this, but you can just as well use a toothpick or a match for this part. Now we're gonna cut what's gonna be set in front of the belt, just to hold the weapons in place. Okay, let's glue in the base of the structure. You could just as well use wood glue. I just use super glue because it's way faster. You have to make sure to be neat because I found out paint doesn't stick well on strong glue. So this beam is purely decorational. It's not mandatory, but I used it on the other crafts, on the other weapon racks, so I used it as well. And then again, you can also use a match or a toothpick instead of the kebab skewer. So there you go, we've got the base of the structure. Okay, now we're gonna cut the parts that are gonna go in front and at the back of the weapon rack, just to hold the weapons in place. One for the front, one for the back. I'm gonna glue them on the craft. There you go. We're gonna trim it. You don't really have to do this, but I find it better to trim a little bit, give it a more weathered look. Now we're gonna fix the upper parts. So we're gonna take another part of the stirrer and stick it in place a little diagonally, just to make sure that the pole axes and the spears could be set on top, so with a little bit of an angle. If you want to go for the helmet rack, you're gonna set it completely flat, horizontal. For the ranged weapons, I just used one toothpick, and for the last rack, I used 2 matches. You could use toothpicks just to set the axes between them. Okay, now we're gonna cut the toothpick, cutting it in very small parts, because spears and pole axes are gonna be set there, so I want something to be able to separate them, to hold them. There you go. Then I'm gonna trim them. So you gotta make sure they're mostly the same size. Okay, so I'm gonna go for the paint. So you could do a very dark base coat, but for such simple furniture with very few recesses, I just went for straight brown. I'm just going to do some highlights afterwards. So I'm just painting it up in brown. Okay, while the weapon rack is drying, I'm gonna show you how to build several of the elements you can find in a weapon rack with only cheap materials. So here we're using a toilet paper roll to make shields. So there you have a kite shield, and here is the heater shield. See, we're using the curve of the roll to make the curving of the shield. Very easy. Now we're gonna do a bow. So, cut a toothpick, because it's way too big, and then we're gonna trim the other side to make sure each side is pointy. Then we're gonna flatten one side. So, taking care to remove some of the toothpick, flat on one side. You will drip it in water, soak it in water just to make sure it's a lot more flexible, and then see, you'll be able to flex it and give it the proper flex of a bow. Okay, let's do a sword. I'm gonna use the plastic card, trim one side, then cut it, and then we're gonna cut some very small parts, so you gotta be precise for this. We're gonna do the guard. Stick it in place. You can use the top parts of a toothpick to do the handle, and then you're gonna cut a very small plastic part just to do the pommel. Of course, you could reuse something else if you got very small, I don't know, maybe very small beads or something else. I just went for plastic parts. There you go. Mini sword. Now let's see how we can do an axe or a pole axe. First, you're gonna take one of your paper clips and a very small scroll of paper, and you're gonna glue it, making a roll. Secure it with glue. There you go. Now we're going to go for the blade. So you're gonna cut part of your card, giving it roughly the shape of a blade of an axe. Trim this side just to get the right shape. And lastly, you're gonna bevel one side, the cutting edge. You can trim it a little bit. And then you're gonna stick it to the pole on the paper roll. There you go. Pretty easy. Now you can also stick some spikes on top of that or at the back of this to make a pole axe. So for my own weapon rack, I already had some weapon parts I scavenged from miniatures so I'm gonna use these. There you go. Pretty neat result, right? Okay, let's paint this up. First, I'm going to do a dry brush, just for the highlights of the weapon rack. Now, of course, you can go for a slightly lighter brown than the one you used to, or if like me you're going for a more weathered look, you can go for some kind of grey. This weapon rack definitely has seen better days. Let's paint the handles. I'm gonna go with some very light brown, almost yellowish, just to make sure it stands out on the weapon rack. Okay, let's go for some kind of gunmetal for the metal parts. A very dark metallic tone. Then I'm finishing with a silver dry brush. Of course you could do the opposite, starting by the silver with silver paint and then making a dark gunmetal wash. I just like the effect given by the silver dry brush. It's gonna do a scratch effect on the weapons. And that's what we're going to do, is to secure the weapons on the weapon rack using clear glue. You can use PVA glue, just to make sure they won't move. There you go. You just need to leave it to dry. So there you go, the craft is finished. Very easy craft, very good rendering. So if you like weapon racks and this little tutorial, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And see you later for another episode. Landvaettr signing off.